Hey guys, today I'm going to be ranking every card in Clash Royale, so without further ado, let's get into it. First up, we have the Archer Queen. The Archer Queen has kind of fallen out of the meta as Monk became more popular, and yeah, I feel like there's Lightning's more common in the meta now too, so it's not nearly as good and pretty easy to counter, so I still think it's pretty good, so I'm going to put it as a B tier. Archers are pretty good in cycle decks. I think they're very good and they can deal with a lot of tanks for pretty cheap if you have smaller cards to defend for them. So I'd say they're also about a B. Next up, we have the arrows. Arrows are a good card in general. I think that they're very good because they can defend almost every small troop in the game, if not every small troop. I think they might be able to just defend every small troop, air and ground, and they usually seem to get a lot of value. So I think for that, I'm putting it at an A tier. Baby Dragon is a really good card. You used to get it pretty early. I don't know when you get it now, but it's pretty good. The splash damage and the fact that it's an air unit also means that it can take care of almost every small card in the game. And yeah, it's pretty decent, but I don't think it's as good anymore. So I'm gonna put it at a B. Next, we have Balloon. Balloon is a very fragile win condition. So it really can't there are cards that will be able to defend it, like Wizard, and you know if you time your Fireball right, I think you can defend it with a Fireball. But that's part of the reason why it's not super good, because the tower, if you have a building or an air defender, unless you combo with other cards, you're not going to get a lot of hits on it. So it's going to be a C. The Bandit is a card that is primarily used in bridge spam, and that is why it's going to be where I would say bridge spam is in the meta right now, which is a C. Actually, no. I think Bandit's a B. Bandit's a B. It's a good card. Next is Barbarian Barrel. Barbarian Barrel is pretty good right now because of the splash yard meta, and if you just use 2 elixir, you can get a graveyard on the tower, which is really good. So I'm putting it there. Barbarian Hood. The picture says 7 elixir. It's not 7 elixir anymore. It's 6, but I still think it's pretty bad. But I don't think it's as bad. I feel like it could be it could be used, but it's not an F. Very few cards are going to go in F. Um, Barbarian Launcher. I think that the Barbarian Launcher is pretty good. I feel like, but the challenge was really annoying to do because the card was so good. Like if you got a Barbarian Launcher on tower, it was so hard to defend. So I think that if you can get a lock on tower, it's very much like Expo, where if you can defend it well, then you will get tower. So it's an A. Barbarians. Barbarians die to a fireball, but they tend to get a lot of value when they don't. So I think for that reason, because they can deal with almost every tank in the game, I think it's gonna have to be a B, only because they die to fireball. And if they didn't die to fireball, it would be like an S tier card. Bats. I think this might be our first S tier because bats are super good in cycle decks and they can defend a lot of cards. And they're just really good. Battle healer. Um, until they rework this card, it's always going to be an F, and it's really only viable in one deck, and we all know what that deck is, and I don't want to talk about that deck. Next is the Battle Ram. Battle Ram is pretty good at bridge spam, and it's primarily a bridge spam card, so I'm going to put it with Bandit for the same reasons. Bomber is similar to Bats, good in cycle, and always seems to get a lot of value. So I'm putting in S as well. Bomb Tower is very I feel like people were being oh, Bomb Tower's bad, but because it can defend the Royal Hogs and even defend a lot of cards, surprisingly. I'm pretty sure if you place it correctly, you can defend some elite barbarians as well, which is pretty good. So I'm gonna put it at a B tier card. The bowler. The bowler can knock back most small troops, and those troops include like the Valkyrie, the elite barbarians, and they can sometimes even get a connection to the tower, kind of like Magic Archer, but a little bit worse in terms of range. Um, when I think of this card, I think primarily of Lumberloon Freeze because or Graveyard, and I think that probably puts it as a B tier card, or maybe an A tier. No, I'm gonna put it as a B tier. Cannon Cart. Cannon Cart is a great card because of its second bar of health, and if it can connect to the tower, it can usually do a ton of damage. So I think I'm going to put it at an A tier card. It's also very good defensively. Cannon got a recent nerf. I think it was a damage reduction of 9% health. So I don't think it's like better than the bomb tower right now. It's one less elixir, but I don't think it's as good, so I'm putting it at C tier. Clone is a D tier card. There are good decks that use it, like Lava Clone and like Giant Skeleton Clone, or even like gimmicky decks like Elixir Golem Clone. But it's very situational, and if you know how to defend Clone, then it is a dead card. Dark Prince. Dark Prince might be our first S tier card, or like non-cycle S tier card. But I'm considering. I think it's an A. It's like a Valkyrie, but it does a lot more damage and it has a charge, which is just ridiculous to me. Dark Goblin is also an S. Dark Goblin always gets value. It is so good. It does 500 damage to the tower for a 3 elixir card if you just let it go. And if you're slow on defending it, it will get hits. Earthquake. Earthquake is pretty good in the meta right now, I would say. So I'm going to put it at an A tier card. The ability to do extra damage to buildings is really useful, and it's not even a bad, like, big spell. Electro Dragon. Electro Dragon is at best a C tier card. And again, we all know what deck this card is viable in, and I don't want to talk about it. Electro Giant. Electro Giant's mid. And that's all I have to say. They nerfed it, and you're not really seeing it in at 5,000 trophies anymore, and there is a reason for that. Electro Spirit. Electro Spirit's pretty good, but because of how easy it is to activate King with it, I'm gonna have to put it at a B tier. But if it weren't easy to activate King Tower, then it would be higher. Electro Wizard. This card is not an S for one reason, and that reason is it can be countered pretty easily, but its ability to deal with like swarms and bigger units is pretty versatile card. So I'm putting it as an A tier. Elite Barbarians, the mid-ladder menace. So I think I'm gonna have to put this card at C. It's pretty easy to defend in higher arenas. Like you might struggle with it in low ladder, but it is not as good as you think. Pump, also C. It's okay. I don't really think that like it's very it's not as versatile as the other cards up here. Like in S or even B. Like Archers, Baby Dragon, they're pretty versatile. But Pump is just not versatile, so that's why it's in C. Elixir Golem. Literally one of the most broken cards in the game. Like, okay, maybe not broken. It's probably an A tier because if it gave, it's a 3 elixir card, but it gives the opponent elixir, so you can defend it with a Skarmy for a +4 elixir trade, despite the fact that they're the same. But you have a lot of elixir to use to support it with spells and stuff. Executioner is back in the meta, because of like Hog Exinado. I guess that's not really a super popular deck, but still, Executioner Tornado is a really good combo and a really, really, really strong like defensive card. Fireball is an S tier because you can usually always get positive elixir trades, and if you're playing a card like Zap that can't defend like Goblin Barrels, then you can just use the Fireball for a -1, which isn't that bad. Firecracker does a lot of damage for a low dealing card, and it usually is put behind like these bigger troops, and it's good defensively too. But because of the King Tower activation, I'm putting it in an A tier and not an S tier. Fire Spirit is pretty good. It does like 200 damage on the tower for 1 elixir if you leave it alone. It has to be answered. It's the same thing with Furnace, but because Furnace is 4 elixir and it's okay. But like a Fire Spirit, because its cycle is better. Fisherman is a really good card, but I don't know about S. So I'm just gonna put it at A because you can use it to get lots of King Tower activations. But looking at the cards in S, I don't know if it's as good as them. Flying Machine is pretty good in Fireball bait decks, but I don't really know how well they fit into the meta. It doesn't really do well against the poison and graveyard decks. So right now it's probably like C or B. I'm gonna put it at B. I think B is pretty good. Freeze is one of the most annoying cards to play against, but once again, it's just a C. Like it's not super hard to defend. And it's just pretty normal card, you know. It freezes. You can use it to surprise your opponent, but like if you're playing somebody who's good at the game, they're not going to be that surprised. Furnace, also a C. It's really easy to defend. You just put a big unit in front of it, and then you can soak up all the fire spirit damage. Giant. Um, Giant's okay. I think it's better than Electro Giant, or no, just the same amount as Electro Giant because it doesn't have any way to defend itself, but it's 2 less elixir than Electro Giant, and it's one of the most beefy cards in the game. Giant Skeleton is one of the best cards in the game. So I'm putting it at S. The bomb does like 1200 damage on tower if it connects, and it's just so good. After the rework to Goblin Hut to make it more like the Barbarian Hut spawn rates, I think it's a C. They didn't really make it any better. I just can't see anyone using this card. Goblin Barrel, it's you might disagree with me on this, but I'm not putting it at S because bait is not as good as it used to be. Um, and like with the Monk Phoenix meta, it's just not as powerful. Goblin Cage is a pretty decent card, so I'm gonna put it at A. You can use it to defend, and the giant or like a giant or something, and you have like a counter attack with the Goblin Brawler, so I'm putting it there. Goblin Drill is one of the best win conditions right now, so for that I'm putting it at S. It used to be not as good, but now it's really good. After the buff to Goblin Gang, I think I'm putting it at an A because there's more goblins, it does more damage, and yeah, it's just pretty good. Goblin Giant is probably a C tier card. I don't think it's super good, and it really doesn't have anything special about it except for the 2 spear goblins, and I don't even remember the last time I played a Goblin Giant, but not very often. Next up, we have goblins. Goblins are very good right now. They can do a lot of damage surprisingly. Golden Knight used to be like one of the worst champions, but now it's like one of the best because the Golden Knight NATO combo is really good. Golem used to be one of the best win conditions, or well, not the best, but it was pretty good. But now it's not as good, so it's a B. A lot of the win conditions here are gonna be Bs, but yeah. Graveyard is an S tier card, as I've been mentioning about the graveyard meta, so we know Splash Art is kind of in the meta. Guards are really good because you always seem to get value out of them, and most small spells can't deal with it. Heal Spirit used to be a D or an F, but now it's more like a B because of how the Phoenix and the Monk are. This card is seeing more play. Next, we have the Hog Rider. Hog Rider is one of the most balanced cards in the game. It has a sufficient amount of counters, and it always does seem to get a hit though. So it's a viable win condition, but still is not annoying to defend. Hunter is great. Hunter can counter a P.E.K.K.A. if placed correctly, and it is one of the best like defensive and even a little bit offensive cards, mostly defensive. Ice Golem. I love how this card works as a building targeted unit, but that doesn't its primary function isn't to deal damage. I think it's such a unique concept, and I think I'm gonna put it at A because it can get a lot of value, especially if your opponent is down on elixir. Ice Spirit is an S tier card. The freeze is so good, and it for just 1 elixir, it's a good cycle card and everything. Ice Wizard is good right now because Splash Art is good, so it's an A tier card. Inferno Dragon is one of the best tank killers in the game, and it can even be used a little bit offensively, so an A tier as well. Inferno is is a is a B tier. I don't think it's an A tier because like I said about Archer Queen, Lightning's more common in the meta, which kind of invalidates it. Knight has good stats for the cost. That's it. That's all you need to know. It's an A tier card. Next is Lava Hound. You may have noticed at the start of the video that we have our own tier for Lava Hound. So, oh, I can't fit it up there. Alright, well, I guess no Lava Hound tier then. So we're gonna get rid of it. No. Well, we already know Lava Hound is an S tier card, right? So we're putting it up here. We might actually run out of room on this tier list, so I might have to just kind of say the cards and their tiers. Lightning is pretty good in the meta right now, so I'm gonna put it at an A. That's it. That's all I'm gonna say about Lightning. The log, the log is the log is good. It always has been. That's all I have to say. Let me just drag it up to S real quick. Log is an S tier card. Always will be. Lumberjack. Lumberjack is, I think, mostly infamous for being a part of Lumberloon Freeze, but it's good. The Lumberjack Phoenix combo is really good. Geometry, or I mean Magic Archer. Magic Archer is probably like really it's an A tier card because you can use it to get tower damage. If your opponent like puts down a card at like the back, like a P.E.K.K.A, and you can use it to get like 700 damage on the tower, so it gets a lot of value. Mega Knight. Mega Knight can destroy massive pushes with its like spawn damage, so that's why it's going to be at an A. Mega Minion. Because the Phoenix is a thing right now, it's a B. I can't really go any higher. Mighty Miner just got a recent buff to movement speed, so I think it is a tier card because of the movement speed buff and its just ability to swap lanes. So you have to like really commit to defending it. Miner is an S because of Miner control. Miner control is very powerful right now. Minion Horde. The buff to minions actually kind of made this card viable. I'm not going to put it at an A. I'm going to put it at a B, but only because Arrow's value. Minions just went up to an A. And they're still not better than bats because of cycle, so I'm putting it there. Mini P.E.K.K.A is an A. It's an A. It's like the Inferno Dragon. It's one of the best tank killers, and it can also be used offensively. Mirror's D. It's just not very good. Like it they nerfed it, so now it only does level 15, and you might see it on mid ladder, but it's not that good. The Mortar is probably an A tier card. Maybe no, yeah, S. I'm gonna put it at S because of how much value it can get if you can defend it, and it's only 4 elixir, but it has a ton of health for a building. Mother Witch, probably one of the most broken cards in the game in certain matchups. I'm leaning towards S because if you're going against somebody who's playing Skarmy and they can't get the Mother Witch off the board, it's a game over, especially if it's over leveled. Musketeer is B. I don't really think it's too insane because you have other better air defenders like like Ice Wizard to slow down and other smaller air defenders like Dark Goblin. Next is Night Witch. Night Witch is bad. It's just bad. It doesn't do anything special, and it's just kind of meh. And it really only works in Golem Night Witch, and Golem isn't even that good right now. So P.E.K.K.A.'s a good tank killer, especially early on. But I'm gonna put it at an A tier card because it is very slow and clunky, and it can be defended by a lot of swarms. Poison. Because Splash Art is really good right now, for the same reason as a lot of things, I'm putting this at a S tier card because of how good it is. The Prince. The Prince is just the worst Dark Prince. I'm putting it at a B. It's a 1 extra elixir, no extra splash damage. And its charge is just like the Dark Princess, but you have really no reason to play that over anything else. Princess is probably going to be an A as well because bait, and that's it. But it's not better than Goblin Barrel. And the only reason you would play Princess is because you're playing bait. So we're not going to be playing bait. So bait's not really in the meta. Rage just got a rework. So that's why it's not like a D or an F. Because now it does damage, which in turn buffed the Lumberjack. So Rage is going to be a lot more annoying to deal with now. Ram Rider is actually a lot better than I think you would expect. It really does seem to get connections, especially if it has a higher level, and the slowdown effect even allows it to be pretty viable against Balloon. Rascals are D tier card. Like, it's basically like playing a Goblin Gang, but worse. Like, it's a knight and two archers for one less elixir. And the knight is really slow and bad. So, it's not worth playing. Rockets is pretty good. I would say that it's a really good spell for spell cycling, and also if you can put it in a cycle deck, it can really help you deal with pushes that you wouldn't really be able to defend normally. Um, the Royal Delivery. We're going to put the Royal Delivery in A because of how good it is. It's just good in general. I think it's a pretty good card. Next is the Royal Ghost. I'm gonna put it at B. It's slow and very like clunky, and even the cards it's supposed to kill, it can't kill sometimes, so it's just not very good. Royal Giant is maybe even an S tier card. I think I'm just gonna keep it at A because you know it's actually pretty good right now. Royal Hogs are definitely an S, definitely an S. Like they're so good. I they're just such a good card. Like if you split them, they're really hard to counter if you don't have the correct building for it. Royal Recruits are also really good, but not as good as Hogs. I feel like these cards are also known for Fireball Bait, but Fireball Bait isn't like in the meta right now, but it's still pretty good. Skarmy is pretty good. It's an A because it can defend like most tanks and also gives some value to graveyard players who are using Skeleton King. Skeleton Barrel is B. It's just like a Goblin Barrel but worse, and it might get a little bit more damage, but it's really easy to counter. Skeleton Shrikes die too easily, and you can't really have much of a counter push with them. But if your opponent leaves them alone, your opponent can't really defend them with like, well, no, they can be defended by bats and stuff. I think they're B, but only because of no, because like even the splash damage they're supposed to do, they don't do right. I think they're like a C tier card. Skeleton King is an S because of the splash shard meta. That's the one reason. Skeletons are an S because number one, Larry God, and number two, it's because skeletons are really good in the cycle as well, and you can use them to counter a lot of things. Snowball is one of the most underrated cards in the game. It's actually pretty good. Its slowdown effect is very useful, and you can use it to even sometimes steal towers. Sparky is maybe even no. This is like a D tier card. I don't think anyone uses Sparky. I mean, it's just not very good, and I don't see why you would even use it. Spear Goblins can kill a P.E.K.K.A., but for one extra elixir, you can get it with three other goblins with the Goblin Gang, so it's a C tier card. The Super Mini P.E.K.K.A. is literally a card that one-shots everything. How could this not be an S? Tesla is just a card that, like, why would you use it over Inferno Tower? And the one deck everyone's thinking of right now is Tesla Expo, so it's a B. I just realized I put Inferno Tower in B as well, so maybe a C, but I don't think it's that bad. I just think, like, Inferno Tower and Tesla are right about the same. 3M. 3M is okay. I think it's okay, but because of the meta we're in, they're just not super viable. So I'm gonna have to put them at a B, not a C, because they're still really good if your opponent can't counter them or don't have Fireball. Tombstone is an A tier card. It's very good, and in also like if your opponent like can't really put anything at the back to like apply pressure if you have a Tombstone down. Tornado is an S tier card. It is just so easy to use and combos with so many good cards so well. It's actually insane. Valkyrie is also an S tier card. Like, how could you not put Valkyrie as an S tier card? It is just so good. It's just so good. The wall breakers are actually a decent win condition. Minor wall breakers is pretty good, so I'm gonna put it at an A. Um, right now, okay, we have Witch now, which is a C tier card. It's countered so easily, and with Lightning being in the meta, um, it's just not great. Wizard is D. It's just not very good. Like, Executioner exists, it has more health, and it does a little bit less damage, but the return of the Axle is very useful. Expo. Expo is a poo card. It's just bad. I don't even know why people use Expo. It's just so bad. Zappies are actually decent. They're surprisingly better than you would expect, and if you can like just if you just leave like if you got something in a tank for them, they can actually do a decent amount of damage. Zap stuns cards, and it is so useful. Like it is one of the most useful cards in the game because it's such low elixir, and I think it has to be in an S tier. Monk. Monk is good. It's just good, and I think we all know this, and we all know where Phoenix is going to go to because it's Phoenix. Now, for the cards that aren't on the list, you may have noticed that we had one Super Troop in here, Super Mini P.E.K.K.A. I didn't make this tier list. I found it on Tiermaker. So we have right now the Santa Hog Rider that's coming, and I think I saw the Santa Hog Rider trailer. It can basically take a tower by itself, so that's also an S tier, and the Super Witch is really good too, so I think I'm gonna put it as at like an S tier, but because it does lightning, no, like an A tier, A tier. Um, and lastly, the Super Lava Hound, which is, it's Lava Hound, so it goes in its own tier, and that's gonna be it.